we go. Well, here we are. I think we're on the air.
We're on the air, in your hair. What little I have left, yes, me too. I'm wearing my patriotic hat today.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, and we're into episode number such and such on season number whatever. And
wait a minute, season 4.
Oh yeah.
Number 13. Yeah, I had another hand there.
Yeah.
And of course, we missed last week, but I guess we decided that we're going to do the eve before the election commentary, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, and I guess just coupled with that, I'd like to put out the issue of voting. Many of us who have been here for several generations have had fathers and grandfathers who have gone off shore to fight in various wars around the globe to try and maintain some kind of discipline and having a right to vote. I think that's kind of going by the wayside now. People would sooner sit back and moan and groan about what happens at an election, but they may or may not actually have gotten out and vote. We're finding that in particular here now with the young people that are saying it's us old gray-haired baby boomers that are going to determine the outcome of the election. And while that may have been the case in the past, because ours was the biggest bloc, I don't think that we are that big a bloc anymore. The younger voters are now the bloc. So if you think that you don't have a voice in this, you're wrong. Get out there, exercise your right to vote that's been handed down to you. And just because your parents voted liberal or your parents voted conservative doesn't mean that you have to do that either. It's up to you to look into the platforms of the various parties and vote with who you think is going to best represent what you would like to see happen in the future. Don't blame me for the problems that are going on in the world. It's kind of like when we were working. You try something new and everybody complains. And when I supervise people, I said, don't complain. Look for solutions. Bring me something that you think might work better. Well, that's what you young people have to do. You have to get out there, and this is not just Canadians because we're on the eve of an election. It's Americans. It's our friends in Europe. Get out there, vote. Look at the issues. Look at what's going on, and if you don't like it, make a stand for a change.
And change is exactly what I will unabashedly say we need in this country. Because if we don't, we're going to do exactly what Albert Einstein says. We'll do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. This particular election is actually not even about the political parties who are going head to head. It's about a philosophy of, do you want more of the same? If you do, fine. You'll get more of the same. If you think that there needs to be some adjustment to your future possibilities and probabilities, then you have to vote for a change. And there really is only two choices in this. It's very binary, this election. You want more of the same, or you want to take a chance at something different. Yeah. And I think we also have to talk about the elephant in the room and put an end to this once and for all. This is not an election about Donald Trump and what he will do or won't do or has done or whatever. He is not on the ballot here, even though some people would suggest this is the issue. This isn't the issue. The issue here is that for the last decade, we've gone down a particular road, economically, socially, environmentally, and so forth, which has brought us to where we are now. The fork in the road is this, and Trump isn't there. The fork in the road is either you decide you're going to do more of the same because it fits your lifestyle or your pocketbook, or you just don't give a damn about, or you're comfortable with the way you are, then then we know what your choices are. If you are looking for a change to improve your lot in life and that of your kids and your grandkids, and
or dare I even say that we're looking perhaps now to our great-great-grandchildren.
Well, and in fact, in a geopolitical sense, we're caught between a rock and a hard place on this if we don't make the change, because we can choose to align ourselves with the communist Chinese or the Marxist bureaucrats of the European Union, frankly speaking. Those are your choices vis-a-vis 100 years of what we've dealt with a rather benevolent group, frankly speaking. So at the end of the day, there are certain realities, geopolitically, geographically, historically, traditionally, and so you have to put those into the mix. And if you want to make those changes, then you have to be brave enough to face the consequences. And those and simply yelling at the sky because you think Trump is there isn't going to save Canada. And I want to add one more thing, which we spoke in pre-production. When I start reading articles in the Toronto Star, which is nothing more than a rubbish newspaper, just in my opinion, it's just rubbish. And it talks about who cares if Alberta leaves the Confederation. When you hear that kind of talk coming out of a national newspaper of the sort the Toronto Star pretends to be, then I have to say that on Tuesday morning, we will have a big, big problem in this country of being one that's coast to coast.
Yeah.
So, this is serious stuff here. When that kind of open nonsense is published, blatantly in a newspaper like the Toronto Star, but who cares if they leave or they should leave, or, it doesn't matter. Fine. You're going to take a third of the population in Alberta or Western Canada. It's already had enough of this treatment, and you've just decided to up the octane in that discussion.
That's right. Yeah.
And
in the reality, again, we're into the middle of an election. Well, the end of an election now, coming up tomorrow. In every election that I've ever can think of going back in the decades that I've been voting, they always manage to come around to say, you people in the West, you're going to have the final say. And the reality is, I don't care how many new seats they've added to Parliament, because if the West gets 6, the East gets 6. It's just the way it is. And the bulk of our population is in Toronto, Montreal area. And if they decide that they're going to vote Rhinoceros Party, that's who's going to be the government, simply because of numbers. And I think that's where some of this Western alienation is coming about. We have a voice in Parliament. We supposedly have a voice in the Senate, although of the 105 senators, 90 have been appointed by the ruling party?
The vast majority.
The vast majority. And it was not too long ago that BC just got an extra senator. And I think that put us up to 5 or 6, which was the exact same number as Prince Edward Island has.
Yeah. Those are the realities of Canada, unfortunately. This Senate that you're talking about, even if there is a change in government on Monday night, that Senate will be the deep state that wrecks everything that the House of Commons wants to do, because these people have figured out constitutionally, shall we say, how to ensure longevity, regardless of what happens with respect to the will of the people.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some serious slugging ahead. Here's the reality. No matter who wins on Monday night, but let's just say Poilievre wins, he has one hell of a hill to climb
Oh,
when it
absolutely. He's going
comes.
to look in all the cupboards in Ottawa, and there's going to be nothing there for him.
Well, there'll be stuff that there'll be IOUs all over it with sticky notes. Oh, by the way, I gave another 100 million to the UN. Where'd you get the money from? Oh, I gave another 80 million here and 20 million there. And I signed off on this. I'm going to build a railway here. I'm going to do this and that. Well, those IOUs on the sticky notes in the cupboard, there's going to be serious trouble here for this guy. And you and I both know that the Canadian voter is a fickle lot. Okay, let's say that this is what happens. Carney and Singh and all vanquished to history. But this guy, Polyev, is going to have to figure out how to go at least a year before the folks on Main Street lose their minds over the fact that the hole that has been dug for this country is massive. How are you going to bridge that? There's going to be pain. And in many ways, maybe this albatross should be hung around the very people who created it, but they're not interested in solving the problem. They want to get an excavator and make this hole even bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously, our position for readers, listeners, and people watching it is clear that we don't want more of the same because we don't think we're going to get any better solutions.
No.
The other thing that I don't want to be is an enemy to my neighbor, which is what this is now starting to become. A fool is elbows up nonsense that these guys created out of whole cloth here. By the way, you get a penalty in hockey for elbows up. So, this is really a very strange brew. And I'm concerned that when the radicals who invented this in the far left of the Liberal Party run into the radicals in the United States who will see this as an affront to their country. I don't want to get in a fight with a guy that's 10 times my size. This is a gorilla I don't want to deal with. Yeah. So think about that when you go. Look, there may be some real surprises on Monday night, and nobody has a crystal ball. But no. I'm convinced, though, that the vast majority of Canadians are not that stupid. There's a bunch of us that are pretty thick, but not. I really have faith in the electorate, and no matter who wins, and obviously I'm no fan of the far left getting into office because I think they will put the final nail in the coffin of Confederation. We'll have to deal with it on Tuesday morning in a civil way. But I fear that the civil discourse that seems to have gone down the proverbial toilet over the past 5 weeks by certain elements within the far left contingent of the political spectrum in this country doesn't bode well for any kind of bridging of the gap that you were saying earlier, that we should come together. I don't think there's any coming together. I don't want to be a pessimist, but even with a conservative government, coming together is going to be very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Okay.
Over the last 5 years in particular, that I guess around COVID time, they started driving a wedge, and that wedge is, if you've ever split wood, you know what it is. The deeper it goes, the bigger the divide comes, and it's going to be difficult to take that wedge out and get people back onto human communication, and living the fact that yes, you can have a left-leaning point of view and I can have a right-leaning point of view, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I hate your guts. It means we have differing points of view, which is what I think my father and my grandfather went out to fight about. You can have these different points of view, but you still maintain some kind of core identity. And that's another thing. I'm going to go off on a rant here.
No, go.
The last 10 years in particular, we've had a government that has gone into the post-nation state diatribe. We are nothing but a bunch of white colonialists. we have to get rid of the old stock immigrants and bring in new stock. And we took away a passport that was full of patriotic things and filled it full of snowflakes and stick people. And now these are the same people that are rallying our troops because apparently, according to Prime Minister designate Carney, we're at war with the United States. And now these are the same people that are wrapping themselves in the flag, drinking maple syrup like it's beer, and expecting people to believe that they have a concern for the country. Well, if you had a concern for the country, you would have been doing things in the last 10 years that weren't a detriment to the country. And I think that's all I'm going to say on it. I mean, it's...
Yeah, no, I think it's you know, it's the vibe that people talk about the vibe. The vibe in this country is very difficult to figure out because it confuses anti-Americanism with patriotism. It confuses well-being with a barely functioning health program, or you know, it pretends to be something on the world stage, which it's not anymore. And it suggests it welcomes everybody here, even though they're unwelcome and unwarranted in terms of the open door policy. So there's a lot of hypocrisy that is tossed about by essentially the far left, because the Liberal Party isn't the Liberal Party of Laurier or Pearson or even Trudeau Sr. This is a completely radical bunch, which we have seen has become very much like the American left, far left, the Democratic Party in the US, the Black Rocks. The American influence on our politics, particularly within the Liberal Party, is self-evident. Okay, it's just so clear. And it's going nowhere south of the border. And the copycat politics of the liberal federal liberals is a joke. I'm sorry. Okay, it's just like the junior league trying to pretend it's in the major leagues when it's not. It hasn't got the wherewithal. It doesn't have the intellectual capacity. And sure as the heck doesn't have the power. Okay, so the thing that got me in this entire election was the one statement made by Mark Carney, which was abysmal, where he said, if the Americans don't lead the free world, Canada will. And I thought, are you serious? What the heck kind of nonsense are you spewing out to the great uneducated class that you're chasing here? Because we have neither the power or the
resources.
Or
well,
the
we have resources, we just don't have the way to get
or
them.
the intellectual capacity to do that. Okay, it's just not. And I think that in and of itself was what for me was the peak of abysmal politics, which is where we are today. So we'll find out in 48 hours.
Well, it's true. And in 48 hours, if the Liberal government does manage to get back in,
I think all bets are off.
In deep trouble, because they will probably start pushing that C-11 bill nonsense back again, and you know, curtailing what you can and can't say on the internet in particular, and probably in written speech and everything else. So,
there's no question that this is, again, apart from, you know, visions of megalomania that's in this character's head about how we'll lead if the Americans don't, which is utter nonsense. Is this central planning thing about we don't need 13 economies, you just have to have one economy. Okay, that makes great sense if you're in Moscow in 1975, you know.
Well, it's continuing on, because if these guys get back in, we will not by 2035 have a choice on what kind of car we have.
Well, apparently they've moved that up to 2030. I got bad news for you.
Well, there you go.
So no, though, this central planned economy stuff is pure Marxism. This business of we're going to build a 1 million homes, like what the Lego block homes you see in Warsaw and Budapest and Moscow, so all the little workies can be in their 650 square foot box on the 32nd floor. That didn't work out well for those folks, okay? And that's
No.
what this guy's at. Why is the federal government even involved in that kind of build a bureaucracy to build houses? So look, we're at the tail end of the election. There's been so much stuff talk. The last thing that gets me is that no time did I see anything that was even remotely resembling empathy by the Liberals and Mark Carney to the very people whose votes he wanted to get. He never talked about the workers. He stood in front of guys in shiny hard hats, but he never talked about what it was like for them to buy groceries, what it's like for us seniors to figure out on a fixed income how you're going to pay your bills every month. He never talked about, the grandkids who are going to be saddled with hundreds of millions, billions of dollars worth of debt. He never talked at the personal level, but what it's like to be, caught in a grocery store and putting stuff back on the shelf because you can't afford it. Okay, he never talked about that. He only talked about in esoteric terms many times about how he's got the experience as a banker to do this, that, and the other thing. Talked over the heads of people, and obviously talking to the great converted who follow him like the Pied Piper, or from the Trudeau shack over to the Carney shack, because that's all this is. And I'm, that's so. But to me, the empathy from this man, any vibrance from him, zero, nada. This guy is a cold fish, talking, and he has a short temper, and has zero interest in the lives of ordinary, hardworking Canadians. Now, I'm not going to give Poilievre a pass 100% either, because the slogans all sound nice, but now you got to put meat on the bones. So he's said some things, and the only thing I will say he kept an honest position on was the CBC, even though they came right up to him and said, "If you get elected, does that thing go?" And he said, "Yes." Boom, I'm off. And in most cases, you would have a politician's weasel around with, "Well, we'll take a look at it, we'll have a study," and this is plain and simple. This is a quagmire of financial nonsense piled into the wallets of Canadian taxpayers. So all that said and done, my positioning is pretty clear. I want to see a change. But as you say, what are you going to do with the wedge issues that have been created? And certainly the American style politics that the far left injected into this past 5 weeks has been as clear as crystal. And,
well, interesting. Just sparked another little thought, and I know that's dangerous. This smoke that's coming out was actually a thought that was coming. American style politics. And how is Mr. Poilievre Trump-esque, Trump-like, Republican-esque?
He's a multi-millionaire just flying around. Come on, give me a break.
Well, and you sit back and you think, and to me, in my very limited brain power that I have, I remember when Mr. Carney was anointed as the new leader, because I can't even really say that he was on a fair level field there. I think he was about a 50-yard head start on a 40-yard track. He sat down with his cabinet around him, very reminiscent of President Trump when he was in the White House signing off all his executive orders.
Oh, yes. First thing.
And here he was signing this thing to not get rid of the carbon tax, set it to zero.
Yeah.
And people forget that all the carbon tax is gone. Well, no, it's been reset to zero. The legislation is still there. Tuesday morning, he can come back and say we're back up to $80 a ton that it was 5 weeks ago, and too bad for you.
And there's one other thing that I have to bring you up to date on, my good friend. Carbon tax came off, but inflation still stayed high for the 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. It didn't make a whole bunch of difference, because obviously this is so far into the supply chain and to the markets that
it takes a while
it's going to take a lot longer than, and the industrial carbon tax is still there. So there was no incentive for industry to pass that saving on to consumers. So, you know, it was really a false flag in many ways to say you took the carbon tax off, but it hasn't impacted at all on the cost of living. So, you know, it's and did it convince people that this is the way to go? This guy's some kind of messiah because he did this magical thing, copycat Trump, about signing a document to nobody, because we all know that he's not the governor general. He has no signing authority. But no one talks about these things. This whole election from start to finish has been like a Potemkin village that was built with people believing all kinds of stuff that what they saw there, but in fact is not, in reality, it doesn't make any sense. It starts off with 400,000 people out of the clear blue sky deciding who's going to run the Liberal campaign, and they decide 250,000 of those shouldn't even be there on their, you know, I mean, the whole thing starts off it's like a bad novel. Yeah. And in any serious country looking at this from the outside must wonder what kind of country Canada is, where you basically get carpetbaggers parachuting people in all over the place who don't even live here, and within 3 months he's the prime minister. I mean, what are you talking about? And then you start doing all kinds of, well, we're not here to you know, this already been played out on the media, so there's no point belaboring that. But at the end of the day, Canadians will have to decide. They want more of the same or they want change. And I don't want to, you know, if there was another word for change, I wouldn't copy what the conservatives saying. I'd use another word, but change is what it is. Hope and change. I hate to sound like Obama, but we do need hope and change.
Yeah.
Simply.
We definitely need something, that's for sure. And I guess, you know, I think we've covered pretty well all our talking points that we were thinking about, but
except for one thing, which happened in your town just yesterday.
Oh, yes. Oh, condolences, yes, to the Filipino community here on the loss of their population.
Victims of this tragedy is, well, you know, we need to think about if it's a horrible accident or whatever, or if it's something other than that. We don't know. We don't have any information here at 2 o'clock Eastern time. There's still no details of really why and how this happened. So the moment it's
rumors are floating out, and at this point I can only say that they are rumors, that it was an individual who had mental health issues, may have been involved with police intervention within the last couple of days. Is it more of the catch and release issues, or is it just the fact that, you know, the situation became too unbearable for this individual when he just went completely up? I don't know.
Well,
time will tell.
The only good thing is apparently it has no criminal or terrorist links.
Yeah.
And let's hope that is exactly right and not being, as sometimes happens rather, because of the election being smothered in the media. I certainly hope that's not the case. But again, to the victims, just it's just horrible. It's just horrible, and really condolences to them, and to our Catholic friends too. The end of, you know, Pope Francis is gone. And so that mourning has begun, and for a big portion of the Christian world, they got a tough hole ahead to find out how to move that religion forward as well, because it's facing some real challenges too. So challenges and change.
Challenge and change. Yeah. Big C words.
Big C words. Anyway, our 30 minutes is almost up, Bob.
Yeah, and look forward to our post-election.
The autopsy.
Maybe. If we're still allowed to go on the air.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And to all our friends, don't forget to hit the button, little bell or whatever on YouTube, same on Rumble. And we'll see you in about 48 hours.
Maybe 72.
Maybe 72. Anyway, don't forget to vote.
Vote, vote, vote. Get out there, even if you've never done it before. Go
Absolutely.
ahead. Do it.
Do it.
Do it.